Hello everyone, can you hear me? Hi Yuran, can you hear me? Is the sound working okay? Awesome. The video is also working, right? Okay, let me see if I can load it a little bit. How about now? Great. Okay, so just as a reminder, first thanks everyone that is here. And, okay, just then let's start right away. Again, we have this time and thanks to Rhizome UV license giveaway at the end of the stream. So don't forget to stay till the end to get a chance to win one of those. And I think the best way to start this is to do a quick recap of what we saw the last time. Again, if you have any questions or have any doubts or want me to slow or speed up the stream, let me know and I'll try to adjust it. And okay, last time what we did was basically create first uh, an anchor point to define the two different the, the two different materials, in this case the clay and the ceramic that I'm calling Talavera, as you can see here. And we define some basic height maps for both to get first on the Talavera or ceramic part a nice reflection break similar to what we see in the references. And for the clay part, or barro as I call it, the again also the a height map, as you can see here, is a little bit too low here in the OpenGL viewport, but if we go to iRay, we can see it a little bit better. So basically, we only did height maps, the base height maps for both. You can see here how the height map for the clay is actually working. Okay. Now, for this time, I think that my plan will be tackle four things if we can. The first one will be to create a more realistic blending between these two materials, because right now it's just basic line. Here we can see some breakups, but the breakups come from the lacing the texture. Second will be to add a little bit of realism to the ceramic by adding some variation in terms of color. And the third will be to add also a variation of color to the clay part, make it more realistic. And finally, to add some of the final rough adjustments to the clay part. I think that with an hour and a half, we will be able to only go that far. I know that some of you guys are very curious about how I made the blue parts that you can see here. Second. And we're getting there. We still need a little bit of extra work first to make them work, and then we can just start painting those. For those also, just as a bit of of information, we will need to use some Substance Designer magic in order to create this kind of layers by creating a filter in Substance Designer. Anyway, with that in mind, I think that we can start working in these 4 points that I talked about. Yeah, 30 lives. I'm not sure that Reason UV will be generous enough to give me basically a license to every participant of the live stream, but that will be cool, I think. Okay, let's get started. We can start then with creating a more realistic change in the materials here instead of this simple line. One thing that I noticed was that in the previous video, I only selected this face in order to create the mask, as you can see here. But I think it will be a cool idea to increase it a little bit more in order to have it a little bit more on the edge here, to create something more similar to what I actually have in my final project. Again, you can see here, this break is here in this part of MeetMat. So in order to get something similar, I think that we need to select an extra face. Let's do that. So we'll take advantage of symmetry here, and then just start selecting. A quick tip is that if you click X while working on a mask, if you see here, by clicking X, you can switch between 0 and 1 immediately. That helps a lot when you're trying to adjust mask. Let's select this one. Promise this won't take too long. Thanks to symmetry, we only need to do half of it. I think we need in Painter a better tool to select. But this, while it works, I think sometimes it has some issues. Okay, there you go. Now that we have an extra loop in the face, let's see how it looks like. Okay, it looks a little bit more similar. We don't have to worry about this, all these small breaks. First, because the breaks are coming here because we have a flat line that we're going to break in a little bit. Second, because most of it comes from the aliasing that will be fixed once we increase the resolution in the final renders. Okay, now let's create a better transition between the materials. The first thing that I think that we can use is here. I'm working in the clay. If you remember, the clay has an anchor point, and that anchor point is the one that is creating the opposite mask for the Talavera. So first thing, we filter and a little bit of blur. As you can see, that immediately smooths down and creates a nicer transition. Maybe 0.8. This blur will help us a lot to define the range of the breaks in the edge. You see the mask? We're having this transition from white to black, and most of the detail will be held here in the mid-gray colors. Okay, then I usually, after adding a blur, I usually like to add a levels, even if I don't modify it right now. I think it can help a little bit or to adjust it. As you can see here, if I move the levels, I change how this blending curve, these mid-gray points are looking. I think it's easier to see in the mask, but will also be is visible here. Okay, let's move it a little bit. Thing around 1.2 is fine. Now let's create the main damage. For the main damage, I'll add a fill layer, and let's use clouds. Clouds 3, I think it's has some nice contrast, so it might work fine. Okay, what can we do here? First, let's change the blending mode to linear dodge. That way we won't modify anything that has the clay material, only the ceramic. Now this is a little too blurry. I keep it on UV projection. Okay, we can see here some breaks from the line that are looking nice. Maybe it's a little bit strong, the balance. Also the scale maybe a little bit too big. Change this to 3, something fine. And for contrast, little. Maybe then also reduce this a little. Okay, now I think we're having some nice breaks here. Also, of course, we need to fix this. Hey Dave, hey David. I'm also in Mexico, so it's nice to see you here. Okay, let's continue then. How can we fix it? I think that a good way to fix it will be increase completely. If we see the mask now here, we still see a lot of white and gray and mid-gray colors, so maybe our levels can help us here. Let's increase the contrast by moving the levels this way. Something around here sounds good. More way. Okay, yeah, definitely good. Now we can see here harder break. Maybe we can here. Now here we can see, for example, how the blur, if we move it, we increase how the range or the size of the breaks in the edge. The bigger the blur, higher the breaks. That's why I like to keep it, for example, something like this. Too low. Okay, I miss something like this better. 0.8. Now we can have here some breaks of the plane. Seem like hard breaks, something like a little bit of chipping on the ceramic, and that's exactly what we want. These levels also let me play a little bit with how the edge is behaving. The clouds is basically a noise. I can increase the size, for example, and the chips will be bigger or smaller. But I think I like it. I like them in two. And these levels finally help me harden or soften views the edges. You see, if I increase the contrast, the breaks are more acute. But if I reduce it, you can see the breaks a little bit more rounder. Okay. Now, what can we do next? I think we can add an extra blur just to control the to have a finer control of the edges. Here, for example, is too strong, but I think we can have something a little bit smaller like this. I think it's okay. Now, this final part is very important because we are talking about displacement here, and if we have a very acute angle between a very big difference between two pixels, you can have some issues when you're using displacement. That's very noticeable when you are talking about materials in Designer, and usually at the end of the height map you try to add a small blur just to soften the overall height map to avoid this kind of issues, because we are relying a lot on rendering time tessellation. Okay, now finally I think that we need to fix these holes that we have all over the head. The easiest, we could adjust and maybe use some kind of curvature mask or something like that, but I think that for this it will be a lot easier just to create a paint layer. Call it fix sample, go to the UVs. I know here that I don't really want any noise. Here I can directly paint, hide it. One good thing about this, you can also don't paint all or erase everything. For example, here I'm leaving a little bit of gray dots that I think that make a good, a nice effect, because we had some bumps, but now we have some small holes here as well, and that gives a little bit more life to the ceramic. So let's finish fixing it in UVs here. Let me deactivate the symmetry without more. Smaller the and a little bit of that weird noise. And okay, the front seems nice. We can, if we don't like some of the holes, we can remove them. For example, these ones. We leave some of the other. For example, I like this crack here, really distinctive. This one also, I like it. And let's clean up the back of the head. Okay, wait, a question. we can see that milky white layer have particular thickness above layer. How to make it thinner? Connected with layer. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. Make it. We can see that milky. Okay. I think I. So you're talking about this height. Maybe is too much, right? The difference between this in this part. Are you talking about that? You're talking about that part in the previous video, if you remember, if you were here, in the ceramic part, in the height part, we added a base height. In this case is 0.5. We can increase or decrease it that way to make it a little bit more larger or smaller, depending on what we want. Okay, let's finish then. Just cleaning up this part. Back to fix. Okay. I'm being a little bit loose because I don't mind if, for example, these kind of holes remain. I only want to make it that no, I don't have any larger holes in the back of the head. You can see here, because remember this is a ceramic that is not so fine or so well made. It's more of a rough artisan made. Okay, now we have the ceramic like this, and we can leave it like this for now. A lot of the edges, if you check out the final image here, we'll have also an extra height layer that will come, and also a variation will come from the blue parts. So that's why I don't want to get too much in detail to fixing everything right now. We can always come back and adjust if we want something else. And with this fixed layer, we can also even create, for example, holes if we want to. Like that gives us the possibility of keeping a lot of flexibility in terms of our direction. Okay. Then let's go, and we can now start by adding a little bit more realism to the ceramic by adding some color variation. But first, let's check how it looks now in iRay. Okay, now you can see that with all the breaks and the blur, we can no longer see those anti-aliasing issues, and also the ceramic looks a little bit more realistic because it's chipped away. And here, for example, you can see one of the holes that I was talking about. Yeah, let me try this tool. I found this tool that maybe can help us explain a little bit better some things. You can see here one of the holes that I left. Also here some of the holes that I left here. Raise that one. I think it's too small. Okay. You can see here another one of the holes that I left. And those, I don't think that looks bad. That's why I didn't really mind to be a little bit loose while erasing them. Okay, I think the tip parts look good now. I think the edge is good enough. Now I think that we can start with the color variation. So in this case, since this material would be only uh, will be a rest place, I don't want to add a lot of detail because check here. I try to have a balance between the detail parts and the rest space on the piece. That's why these parts are mostly white. I have large white parts, and I don't want to saturate it with a lot of detail. Just give enough variation to make it look good and realistic. So let's go. I think we. Hola, Carlos de la Rosa. Thanks for coming. Okay, then for this part, I think that we can start with a simple bass noise. So we can add a fill layer, leave it only to color. We can even make it white, yeah, we can make it full white, and we're going to change the base color blending mode to subtract. That also looks good, but well, that's not what we're looking for. So we add a black mask, and let's see what kind of noise can we use. Actually, I want to use grunge here. Okay, what looks good? I think I like this. Okay, let me add it here, and we add a fill layer to the mask to keep it procedural. Have here the grunge concrete alt. Let's do it a triplanar projection. Increase the scale a little bit. Have something more interesting. Also, let me increase the contrast. I think will benefit. And I want to reduce the intensity thing like this. Okay, yeah, I think that that looks nice. Now we don't have full white. And you can see the level of detail in the stream. How we are adding some dark spots in terms of color to the yellowish color that we had earlier. We disable it, you can see, and now we have a lot more life on the ceramic. Okay, probably that's not enough. Let's add another fill layer. I'll call this one the one that we made, the like bass noise. And in this one, what I want to create are some cracks. So first, let's select a darkish color. This again, call these cracks. Then add a black mask. So add a fill layer. And let's check for a procedural that we can use to make the cracks. Grunges. grunges that maybe makes sense. I think I'm looking something. Now this is too big. So for again, let's make it replanar. Then scale it a little bit. Okay, that's better, but it's too much noise right now. So let's reduce the balance. Maybe something like this. And increase the disorder, just something different. Okay, let's check out the difference. This is what we had when we started. This looks still a little bit too CGI. When we have this color variation, these cracks, now what we have a different, completely different material, right? And as you can see, it's a pretty easy setup. It's just a base noise with a grunge concrete old, used as substrate, just to add a little color variation to the base color that we have, and some cracks made with the marble fine with a grayish color, and just adjusted the scale and the balance and the disorder to get something like this. Okay. Yeah, it looks a little bit marbly, like marble right now, but in the end, when we mix up all the rest of the materials, you will notice that it's not that marble-like. Okay, let's continue. We can check here how it looks with the render. You can see that even here it still looks very ceramic-like. Okay. Now, I think that the main issue that we're having now is that the clay part is too flat, and it's also breaking a little bit the realism of the ceramic. But we can fix that pretty easily. Well, we can start with playing with the colors. The first thing, if you remember in the past video, one of the things that we had here was this directional noise, and we open some references, open an example. Second, I'm looking for it. This is an example of a material, the clay material. We have some whitish colors, some bluish greenish tone, but we can also see here, for example, a little bit of color variation depending on the on this curvature height map that we created, that we call that times like anisotropic. Okay, now that's what I want to create first, because right now, even while we check the height map, we have this height variation. If we check the material, we still look it a little bit too flat. So to create that, we can again create fill layer, the fill layer thing that we can have it here to be dependent on the height that we have here. So first we can create an anchor point. Let's change its name to base clay mask. Base clay height mask. Now here, if we add in the fill layer, we can height color. We only want to affect the color. We can make it almost full white, and we can add here fill, and this fill we can use this the anchor point that we created, and we can see here now all the color variation created by that anchor point. We only want to affect the color, and we can use that as a multiply, for example. And no, this one is the normal. The multiply needs to be at the layer level. Here we can create as a multiply, and we can see all this color variation. Of course, this is a little bit too strong right now, so we can reduce it, maybe something like 30, maybe a little bit more, 35, 6. And now the color is helping us see the variation, as we can see in these references. And if we change anything in the height, because we're using anchor points, it will be reflected here as well. Hi Mobstar, glad you are here as well. Okay, now that we have this height color variation, other things we can, if we want to, for example, now that we're using this anchor point, we can also play a little bit with the intensity by adding a filter. In this time, I'm going to use a gradient. And now, if I adjust this, we can see that we can modify after adding the anchor point how we want the color to change. I think we can leave it something this. Let's check how it looks in iRay. Let's compare it with, for example, the reference. I think it's a little bit too brownish at the moment, but we can modify here to add a little bit red. Bit too yellowish actually. Something like, I think that's too red. I think that's fine. Okay, now we can increase if you want a little bit more pop on this part. We can increase this, but I think that I like it a little bit lighter, like this. Especially in these parts, we can actually see now how the height is working plus the color. Also, some of the details will tighten up a lot when we play with the roughness. So I don't want to exaggerate right now, because then when we added the roughness, the details will be too much. Okay, so now we have this fill. And we have actually, let me see, I think that we can, I think it's better if I add the anchor point at color level. Yeah, because that way I can also have these levels I can use to adjust. I don't see if I don't know if you noticed, but the first time I added the anchor point at material level, the issue here, even if I only enable the color, is that I don't have this extra adjustment that I can have is if I, for example, select only color for this layer and add the anchor point at color level, then I can have this extra adjustment of levels that is coming automatically with the anchor point. So then I can adjust, maybe make it a little bit more, increase the contrast again. Something is now we can have a lot extra variation, right? And we can play with it as to show what we want to in terms of the anisotropic noise. Okay, with that in mind, let me this right for the moment. The next part will be, if again, if we see this reference, we have two different color variations. One that is white tone, and the second one that is more of a bluish, sometimes a greenish tone, like we can see in this other reference, right? And then here we can see, here we can see it doesn't work like that. Sorry, I was trying to use the pencil tool, but anyway, here we can see some white masks, white colors, and here we can see some a little bit of greenish bluish tones. So we want to create that and maybe exaggerate it a little bit more. I still not that. I think the black parts are too strong right now. Not that happy with this. Question from Brian. Will this be a good texturing workflow for game models or just for renderers? I think it's fine for both. In the end, we're talking about the final output of Substance Painter are texture maps. What will be more important in terms of you are looking to work only for a static render or for a non-real-time render or a game model will be if you are planning to use materials or UDIMs, texture sets. But in the end, the final output of Painter is a texture texture set group that has the base color, the roughness, metallic, etc. And in the end, there are just texture maps that you can use in a 3D application to render it, or in a game engine to create a material and have a real time. You may want to use less texture sets if you are trying to work with game assets rather than render assets, because sometimes you need to consider also the environment materials or all the processing game itself. So, but in the end, the workflow for painting and texturing Painter, since in the end you only get a texture set, it's good for both scenarios. Hi Georgios, glad you join us. Okay, then let's add this white, I call it white dust and dark dust. So let's add this color variation. We can, again, if you've have been looking, you can see that I try to keep everything procedural by playing a lot with fill layers and black masks. Again, we have here a new fill layer and a black mask. I'll call it white dust. And here, what I want to add first is a fill layer again to create a base noise. I think a grunge map can work here. Grunge are excellent for dust, that kind of stuff. Find something that I like. Okay, I like this one. First, let's check that we only affect the color here. I like how the dust is showing up here. Also, we need to change this to triplanar projection to avoid any issues. Actually, what we need to change is here, fill layer, the mask to triplanar projection. Also the scale, because it's big right now, something like that. And let's play a little bit with the balance and the contrast. I need less, so maybe something along these lines. But this grunge maybe is a little bit too bit, something like that. Now we can have this. I like this dust because it adds a little bit of history to the material, because here we can see the handcrafting of the model. We can imagine that the artisan that was making the material is touching the clay while painting the ceramic, and it's, of course, because it's from his or her perspective, is a hidden part. He doesn't mind to have this kind of dirt in the clay. Question. Let's see. Arjun, thanks for watching. This tutorial is really showing me how powerful masks are. Yeah, they are indeed really powerful. I like to use it a lot. Not only here, but also in Designer. Not really masks, but more blending nodes. And that's also relates to the question that some of you, I don't remember who asked it, but that was about what to learn first, Designer or Painter. This procedural way of thinking, at least for me, comes from using Designer a lot first. Another question: how do you texture a very big environment? I have problems because the solution is good. And I try to work a big Houdini environment, cliff mountain. Okay, that's a completely different workflow. You can, for example, if you create a terrain map and then you want to bring it to Painter and paint it here, you will need to work in 8K to get some good resolution. Anything else is too low. Then that for that case of scenarios, you need to actually create shader networks, in this case in Houdini, and mix materials and create masks there. Maybe you will be able to create only in Painter some of the masks that you want to use. Take advantage of the grunges and procedurals that Painter has, or Designer will be okay as well. And with that, you actually you use those masks in the, and there can be 8K or 4K masks, and you use those on the terrain and use them to mix materials directly in your 3D application or game engine. Actually, Unreal, for example, has a very strong tools for that kind of stuff. Houdini, I think that you need to create a complex shader network. But one good thing is, if you check the last stream from Substance, they show that they are releasing a new plugin for Substance Designer for Material X. That might be a good way to pre-visualize the material that you are trying to create for this terrain in Designer, and then use Material X to create a shader network, and then use that shader network and export it to any 3D application that you want. That's one of the benefits of Material X. Question? Brian says, I believe most of those will be procedural materials that are only tileable. Yeah, usually use multiple materials that are tileable, and you use it directly in the 3D application that you are using, not in Painter. Okay, then let's continue. I think that's all for now. Okay, now I want to add another layer of dirt. This one will be literally dirt. I'll call it dark dust. And with this part, what I want to sell in the material is that it's been there, the ceramic has been there for a while, and it's getting some dust, and also that the artisan, when it made it, his or her hands were not so clean. So if we remember the reference images, what I was talking about were some greenish bluish stones, like you can see here, or in this other image you can see here. Those ones are the ones that I'm interested right now. So let's first select, set this to color only, and let's select a greenish color. Friends, yeah, something like this. Okay, then again, same as in the previous one, we add a black mask, we add a fill, and in the fill we're going to add a noise. So since, let's see, interesting, dirt, I think we can use this one. There you go. Of course, it's a little bit too much at the moment. Again, 3 planar. Then we make it smaller because it's too big, and reduce the balance. It's too much. Something like this. Still too strong. I want it to blend a little bit more with the reddish color of the clay. So let's reduce this, maybe around half. And now we have the dirt. Okay, I think now that helps a lot by mixing the materials. Take it out in Iray. Yeah, I think that definitely helps. Okay, let's get some light in there to check out how it looks. Get a close-up. Okay, I think what I will adjust right now will be maybe increase a little bit this to make that anisotropic noise a bit more noticeable. Be 40. And now let's play with the roughness. I think that will help us a lot to get the realism going. Okay. So first, if you remember, we set it up to 1. Try to never use 0 or 1 when you're talking about roughness. It's not that realistic. Also in color, try to don't use full white or full black. Okay, so I'll just reduce a little bit the base roughness. Here we are. Now we can first take advantage of the masks that we made. Again, let me move this above the color so we can use anchor points. Things that we because we made it procedural, we can also take advantage of these masks that we use for the color and use them in the roughness. I could add the roughness channel here and set the values, but I think that I have a lot more control if I create an extra layer that only affects the roughness. So let's do that. Here I can change this to roughness, and let's add another fill layer. This one will only affect roughness. And again, we can set it up to full black right now. Again, add a black mask, and this time what we're going to do is use an anchor point. Again, we need a fill layer. In this fill layer, we're going to take the white dust mask. Again, we rename this dust. And now what we see is that in every part that we have the white, we also have a different roughness. Of course, this full black is not what we want. Something more along the lines, for example, a little bit something like this. I think that you can barely see it in the render, but trust me, it makes a difference if you see it directly in your monitor. We can duplicate this one. Now we're going to create a new anchor point for the dark dust that we use in the color. And in the copy, I'm going to rename it to dark dust. And we'll select that anchor point and we'll change this something a little bit more dark. That way we have some color variation here right away in the roughness map. It's not noticeable because it's almost fully white, but in the end we're talking about clay, dry clay, then that kind of roughness is what makes sense. And if we see here in the array renderer, for example, here I'm liking what I'm getting here. You can see how it looks here in this part. A lot more realistic. Also, we can see now the anisotropic enhanced by the color that we added, and we can also see the white dust and the dark spots as well. I think that now what is limiting the realism in the base materials of the head is the way that they are mixing. While I like how the roughness looks like here, right here, I don't like a lot that ceramic, the way the ceramic and the clay are intersecting in terms of roughness. So let's add some. Let's imagine that when the artisan was making the ceramic and using a brush to add a clear coat or a varnish layer overall, he wasn't too careful, right? So we need to reflect that in the clay roughness and in the color as well. To do that, we can add now, again, to keep it procedural, fill layer. I'll call this fill layer wet. I'll add a black mask. With this, all we want to affect right now is the color. Set the color to almost black. And I'm going to add a paint layer. But I want to do this. Also, I'll add this to, I'll change the blending mode to multiply. That way I can paint here along the edge, and maybe too strong. And we can get a darkened color. Also, we can create a fill layer in the roughness and call it wet, black mask, and we are going to use add a fill, and here in the wet we can create an anchor point for the wet mask, and we can take advantage of that anchor point here. Here we can set that it only affects the roughness, and in the roughness we can go almost crazy. And there you go. Now, if we go back to the color, the paint layer in the mask, we paint, we're going to affect both the color and the roughness on those parts, and give the effect of the varnish. Now, I don't like this brush because it's too uniform. So let's erase here. UVs. Oh, I think I made an issue. I painted directly in this mask, but I want to paint really in the paint here, so I can have control. Okay, let's find another brush. Could you explain the anchor points when possible? I'm a bit confused on how they work. Okay, I think this is a great example of how to use it. Anchor points are a way to transfer information that you have in one layer to another layer without having to duplicate it or bake it. For example, here in the wet, I create a mask, right? The hierarchy of the mask first comes what you do here in this part of the mask, then what you do in the layer stack. For example, here, let's check only the mask. Here I am in this mask, and I want to paint something. So let's select, for example, let's select some mask. Let's select these quads. Okay, those quads actually are selected here in the black mask. Then I go to the paint layer that I added to the mask stack, and I'm going to deselect them. As you see, this one is overriding what I have here, because it's first is this one, then is this one, and then we go up to the layer stack. Everything that is under the anchor point, we create this anchor point that we created here by clicking add anchor point. Everything that is under it gets stored as a imagine that it gets stored temporarily in the anchor point. That way, for example, what I have here, that is, I have it won't be noticeable here, so let's select this one. If I select these faces here, and I said there is an anchor point called wet mask, if I want to use that information in any layer that is above the general layer stack, I can reference it by the anchor point. It's what I'm doing right here. I added a fill layer, and the fill layer, that is what you get when you add a fill layer, right? Let me add it from scratch so you can see it. I add a fill layer, and the fill layer here, I can either add a resource or an anchor point. If I select the anchor point, all the information that I defined here in this part, okay, all this information gets automatically transferred to this layer stack of this mask. That way, I can apply exactly the same. If I select this, if I select here and add more stuff, automatically it will be also added here, right? And what I'm doing right now with that is I have this layer that has a black color that is adding at color level. If I hide the roughness for a moment, you can see it, that it's adding a black color, a dark color, right? And I'm using a mask to define what parts need to be added to that dark color. And then in the end of the mask, I create an anchor point. At that anchor point, I'm referencing here in the roughness, and I also adding a wet effect to the same parts that I'm using here in the color layer of wet. Okay. Get out that. Substance painters support ACES color management. I think at the moment they don't support it, but they are working on it. If I recall, they told in the last stream that color management was one of their top priorities for this year. What else? Will this video be up on the channel later? Yes, it will be. And okay, okay, let's continue. Well, let me first undo what I did here. We actually don't want something like this. And then, well, and also erase. Okay, now getting back to business. We wanted to add some wet effect, right? So first we look for a brush. I think I use one of Kyle's Photoshop brushes. Something like this I think will be okay. I like the have the size and so enable to the pressure of the pen. And now we can only add again a little bit carelessly we can add the varnish. I imagine that I'm the artisan that is actually doing this quick because I need to do like 100 of these ones. So I don't really care if they are perfect. Okay, we check how it looks like. You can see here it gives a lot of extra realism just by adding mixing this the way it looks. I'm exaggerating a little bit because I want to be able to see that kind of effect even in these weird angles, right? Because if I look it like this, it doesn't show up that much. How do you rotate your 2D? You mean this? Just Alt and right and the left button. Okay. Probably I also want some strong details that were some sort of accident for the artisan. So I don't mind exaggerating here a little bit more. Just to make it a little bit more believable. And we can do the same on this outer rim. Actually, I think it's easier to do it on the UVs case. Okay, let's check it out. Another benefit is that as you can see here, when we increase the roughness, we immediately get a lot more definition of this anisotropic noise that we added in the last video. I think that I exaggerated a little bit here. Let me make the brush a little bit smaller. Yeah, we want it, but that much and that over the what we want. Let me erase this. I think we can have a lot more control if we do it in the 3D view right now. Again, in this part, we don't mind at all being a little bit sloppy, because that's part of the history of the asset. I think I like more something like that. Maybe a little bit bigger the brush. We can have this kind of variation. And these small details help a lot when you are thinking about blending the materials together. More because we are going from a really glossy surface like the ceramic to a rough one like the clay. Something like that. Okay, let's hide the roughness. And let's hide the color. Just to check it out. This is how we started the clay material today. But then we added white dust, we added some dirt, and then we added the wetness. And in the roughness, we again added the anchor points to the white and the dark dust and the wet part. And as you can see, now the material seems a lot better. Let's check how it looks. I ray again. Second. As you can see, those small details like the wetness, the dust, the dirt, the color variation, the ceramic, improved a lot the render. I think I'm going to share on Twitter and maybe on Instagram as well some of the images of the process, or of how we started and we ended each stream, so you can compare directly how it's improving the material. I think that with that in mind, we can stop right now, and I can answer some other questions if you have any, or recommendations about the stream or in general, or future projects, whatever you want to let me know. Even if you are having issues with some of my plugins, feel free to ask, and then we can do the giveaway. Again, in this time in the giveaway, how about everyone that is still here, just write reason in the chat so I can know and I can add it to the giveaway. Okay, guys, let me see the chat. Which HDRI I'm using? I'm using Tomoko Studio. Okay. No more questions, seems. Let me start creating the notepad. I'm going to put it here so you can see your name, and if I miss you, just let me know. See, some county. Rosa. Okay, 6 people. Okay, anyone else? I'll give a little bit more time for them to write if they are here. Anyway, so no questions, nothing else that you want to know. Also, remember that you can, if you are still not following me on Twitter or Instagram, you can contact me there as well if you have any issues, or directly in the Discord server. Maybe Arturo can add the links to the chat just so you have access to them. Are there benefits to using specular versus metalness? In specular, the advantage of specular is that you can create some non-realistic materials if you want to. You can, especially in terms of reflection, while the PBR metalness will force you to realistic stuff, like how the light works, how the light reflects, and all that stuff. With specular, you have all the freedom to create weird materials if you want some artistic freedom in that regard. The disadvantages are that, for example, you can easily convert a metalness workflow material to a specular material, but you cannot convert them the other way around. It's very difficult to convert precisely a specular material to a metalness workflow. So there are the benefits are more as the artistic freedom, but less flexibility in terms of workflows. Another question, I'm sure you have a nice library of materials. How often do you reuse materials? And how often do you just spend more time to create new one from scratch? It depends. For example, if I'm making a scene and I'm creating the main asset, usually for the main asset, I try to create the material from scratch. For every other part of the environment or small parts, sometimes I just don't have the time to create the material from scratch, and just grab something from source, or also from game textures. Not so much lately game textures or source, because I already have a lot of materials in my library, but usually those are my two main resources. Well, also Pixel. Yeah, I also use a lot of Pixel, mainly for grass or plants. I think that I really like their organic stuff, and that kind of organic stuff is a lot harder to get if you try to create a material in Designer. It's a lot easier to get a realistic result by using a scanned stuff. Tarso, I have an issue supporting maps from Substance Painter to model. Okay, Tarso, I think that I've seen your issue in the Discord server. I tried to replicate it on Model 14, but I wasn't able. I will need more information on terms of your logs and all that stuff. And also if you are on Mac or Windows, and what exact version of the plugin that you're using. Spec is more physical accurate. Well, that depends on each artist actually, because spec you can be as accurate as you want. You can, yes, there are cases that you can be more accurate than metalness, because metalness workflow is assuming a lot of stuff. But if you don't know the exact index of refraction or stuff like that, you can go, you can create weird materials that that doesn't look realistic at all. Okay, well, I think I missed Arjun. Okay, I think that's all of you guys. So let's do the giveaway now. Again, I'll show you here, just to be fair. I won't do a test run this time, so this will be the winner. Okay. Okay, Sawant. Sorry about that. And let's start. Ah, you're such a lucky guy, Arjun. You won the license. Oh, sorry guys, Luis and Georgios, you missed the giveaway. But don't worry, we're going to keep doing that, doing the giveaways in the streams, if, while Ryzen wants to help us with that. Okay, Arjun, please contact me via Twitter or directly in the Discord server, so we can arrange the license. And remember, guys, I'm trying to stream all Tuesdays and Thursdays, just to keep it going, because this is since you guys selected on the poll that I did, you selected that from scratch. This is going to take a little bit of time, so I'm trying to do it all the Tuesdays and Thursdays, just to keep it going and finish before the end of well, as fast as I can. Okay, I think that in the next stream we're going actually to work a little bit on designer, to show you guys how I did the filter that makes all the blue details. Okay, any last question, or we can finish the stream right now? Also, Arjun, be sure to contact me. Okay, I think that there are no more questions, so don't forget to follow us in social media. and give us as much feedback as you can on the content. And don't forget, if you can to support us on Patreon. Stay safe during this time, and have a great day. Bye.